Hello, and thank you for checking out OchoLibre.com. Today we're talking about Vasily Kandinsky, an amazing character. Some would say the father of abstract art, born in 1866 in Russia. Super interesting guy. But before we go there, the Solomon Guggenheim Museum, which is where this exhibit is, a fascinating story in itself, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, another fascinating character. Guggenheim also, all these crazy cats. But Wright designed this. It was completed in 1959, 6 months after he died. Compared to other museums where art was shown basically in box type rooms, this was a radically different design. It has a huge oculus letting natural light in. I think it's 7 stories where you go up the ramp. My mom remembers how contentious this was back in the 50s when it was being built, when she lived in New York. Frank claimed that the stately and staid Metropolitan Museum, just to the north here, looked like a Protestant barn compared to his design. You gotta love Frank. Back to Vasily. I am no Vasily expert, no art expert, but I have seen several of his exhibits. This is the biggest by far. And I thought a little bit of background. He was born in 1866 in Russia. He didn't become an artist until 1896 at the age of 30, when he moved to Munich, Germany, where he stayed until 1914. He was into pointillism, Fauvism before he started moving into abstraction. But his early abstract paintings, late teens and 20s, were extremely radical for the time. You know, we think of modern art here in the United States in the 50s, Pollock and Klein and all those guys. This was 30 years before then, obviously. But he was very into half circles, circles, ovals, lines, planes. He wrote several books on spiritual art, a book I've got from 1910, Point in Line to Plane, another book. So he was a theorist as well as an artist. From Munich, because of World War I, he moved back to Moscow from 14 to 21, where he got into politics and didn't produce a lot of art during this period, but then went back to teach at the Bauhaus in Germany from 1922 to 1933, at which time the Nazis closed down Bauhaus, and he moved to Paris, where he lived until his death in 1944. So a fascinating guy. We're going to take a look at the paintings from the newest period to the oldest period, as they recommend, as the curator of the Guggenheim recommends. (1933 to 1944) in Paris, World War II years. This painting here is called Around the Circle, painted in 1940. So we're looking at the mature Kandinsky in the years before he died, which was 1944. Very polished paintings, very clean, less sort of organic looking than his earlier works. This next one is called Yellow Painting, painted in 1938. Again, you can see it's very clean and polished. He had obviously figured out what he wanted to do and was doing it well by that time. 1935, Violet. A lot of them are just called purple, with circle, purple oval, red circle. Another interesting painting. You know, we could go on and on about each one of these, of course. The next one is called Striped. A bit different, but obviously the lines of the stripes playing with the curves and the different shapes, circles, drops, swirls, dark and light. This one I really like. It's called Green Accent, and it seems to me quite different. It kind of looks like the floor plan of the spaceship from Star Wars, but I really like this one. He did all kinds of different work. in the period between 1922 and 1933, he taught at the prestigious Bauhaus. If you follow architecture or art, you've heard of that. It was in Germany, a famous school, which the Nazis closed in 1933. But this painting here is called Composition Number 8, a very well-known painting of his. I don't know the name of this one, but you can see it's got sort of a cross shape. He was into religious study. I don't know, sort of where that went, but there's a lot said about sort of the mysticism and religious aspects of his paintings. Also, he was involved in both World War I and World War II. Obviously, very tumultuous times. This one here is called Blue, and I don't know the name of this one, probably Blue Circle. The period of 1914 to 1921, he had left Germany to go back to Moscow because of World War I and became quite involved in politics. Didn't produce as many paintings, but this is an interesting one here. This is called Red Oval from 1920. The Guggenheim also had some really interesting watercolors, which I've never seen of his before. This is one of them. Kind of fantastical. Check out that signature on the bottom left. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but almost Dr. Seuss-like to me. I love the kind of blurred colors, and again, very different sort of work of his. This last one was probably, I don't know, 10 inches tall by 20 inches, very long painting. And you can see his work is a bit more organic here compared to the newer stuff. And finally, his early years, which is Munich, really his beginning as an artist. Most notably characterized by the Blue Rider. I think in Germany you say Der Blue Reiter or something like that. Anyway, this famous painting was not at the museum, but it's taught in all art history courses. He's starting to tweak realism for abstraction, and you can see some of his early abstract paintings. This one is called Painting with a White Border, but is that a smokestack in there? People see all different kinds of things, but very amorphic type shapes. This next one is called Landscape with Rain. And compare this to the early period, you can see, it's not as clean. Colors are more mixed and muted. It's not as precise as his late paintings, but of course, still very interesting stuff. Remember, especially, that this was back in the early 1900s. This one called Improvisation number 28, 1912. 1912. This was unheard of stuff in 1912. This one called Sancta Francisca, 1911, painted. It's painted on the back of glass. So, obviously he's not, might be somewhat abstract, but it's more of a realistic, figurative type painting. Winter Landscape with Church, 1910, Oil on Board. So that's obviously some type of a landscape, houses, but certainly abstracted, 1911. One thing I thought was really interesting is this is how Kandinsky signed his name early on. He spelled it out. But later on, he came up with sort of a geometric symbol, which looked more like his style. It's kind of a V there, tilted off to the side, with a K inside there, and then the year was put underneath. So that's it for Vasily Kandinsky. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I ran through that stuff super fast, and there were something like 80 paintings in the exhibit, so I didn't show all of them. But You can always look at it again if you like, and hope to see you around in the next video. Thank you.